Labour MP Emily Thornberry is chair of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, and yesterday she used a meeting of that committee to bring up the dodgy dealings of a senior Israeli politician, while Thornberry was on an official visit to Israel.
Would you expect, Minister, if there was a visiting delegation of members of Parliament to the House of Commons, for the delegation to be videoed without their knowledge or consent?
If someone was visiting the House of Commons?
Yes.
Certainly not. I would think that'd be very unusual.
Or for it to be put onto Instagram and indeed briefed to, let's say, the Daily Telegraph in disparaging terms.
I'm not familiar with the details, but clearly if someone was visiting the House of Commons, we'd want to show them
And it would be
courtesy.
particularly bad, wouldn't it, if it was the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel who would be videoed in the UK and for disparaging comments to be made about her evidence or her private meeting that she'd had, let's say, with us. Because the opposite has just happened to us. And a video of us at the Knesset meeting, the Deputy Foreign Minister, has been posted on Instagram. We understand that, certainly we had no knowledge that it was being videoed and assumed, of course, that it would never happen.
Thornberry was talking there to Foreign Office Minister Hamish Falconer. So who is Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister? Sharon Haskell is currently a member of the right-wing New Hope party, though she's done a tour through most of Israel's right-leaning parties in her short career. She's been serving in Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government since last year. Now, since Thornberry's intervention, Haskell appears to have removed the secretly recorded footage from her Instagram. But everything is forever on the internet. We believe this is what she posted.
What happens if there's elections tomorrow at the West Bank? Did you go there to talk to them? Why hasn't been election there?
Well, I can give you the answers. The first is obviously that when there was an election and Hamas was elected and there was a rejection of that by the international community. Secondly, when there was a suggested election, there was a disagreement with Israel as to whether or not the people of East Jerusalem could vote.
The fact is that there's no elections because the day after Hamas is going to take control. And if we agree in any way to a two-state solution, or the Palestinian Authority is going to control Gaza, it's going to be at the hands of Hamas again. So the fact is that you're asking me to give Gaza again to Hamas. And that's when people come and tell us, you need to do the two-state solution now. For us, it means, in reality, you give it to Hamas back. And that's something that we cannot accept.
A source in the Knesset told the Jerusalem Post that Thornberry's meeting with Haskell was clearly being recorded and no filming was done without the participants' knowledge. Funny that Haskell deleted it then. As Thornberry mentioned there, the Telegraph also referenced the secret recording in a recent puff piece on Haskell. Headlined, "The BBC has made 80 errors damaging Israel's reputation. That's no mistake." The piece appeared to celebrate Haskell's campaign to get the BBC to pull its documentary, Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone. Some of the Telegraph's descriptions of the Deputy Foreign Minister were beyond fawning, like this one. Miss Haskell is one of those magnetic individuals who don't raise their voices in order to make a point. Instead, there's an intense relentlessness. She is utterly certain of the Manichaean justice of her case, that history is on her side as she crushes the arguments in front of her. Emily Thornberry, the Labour chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, found this out the hard way last month when she visited Jerusalem to discuss the fabled two-state solution. In a video posted by Ms. Haskell on Instagram, she calmly asked Ms. Thornberry if the Labour MP understood the unhappy history of democratic exercises in the Palestinian territories, if she had spoken to anyone in the West Bank to ask how they would vote. Ms. Haskell believes they would vote for Hamas. In the end, Ms. Thornberry trailed off mid-sentence, meekly waving her hand, perhaps relieved to move the conversation on. At the committee meeting, Thornberry let it be known that she's pretty pissed off.
I've just found out about it. And to say that I'm cross might be an understatement. There were many things said in the Knesset by many members of the Knesset that we found quite provocative and indeed, if I'm really honest, quite insulting. And the attitude of some of the members of the Knesset were remarkably rude. And we did our utmost to keep decorum at all times and to remain polite and restrained. But I do think this takes it to another level.
Before secretly recording a member of the British government, Sharon Haskell was being widely tipped as Israel's next ambassador to the UK. Too bad that doesn't seem very likely now. Although, Grace, I say it doesn't seem very likely that Haskell's going to get this promotion to ambassador to Britain. But, given that our government, including Emily Thornberry, who actually went on live TV to defend Israel's siege of Gaza at the beginning of the genocide, given that they seem to prepared to forgive Israel like absolutely everything, perhaps I'm too optimistic. So I want to ask you: is humiliating Emily Thornberry and using these classic dirty tricks against her going to even remotely damage the UK's friendship with Israel?
Oh no, I mean I think that's pretty clear. What was striking about that clip was just how weak and fumbling Thornberry looked in comparison to just I think the Telegraph used the word Manichaean. That's something that's usually used not in positive terms, meaning basically this like rigid, unyielding worldview divided between good and evil that many, particularly Israeli right-wingers, utterly epitomize, basically saying we are, incapable of doing wrong in our battle against this enemy, which is unflinchingly and unremittingly evil. And that was very clearly the argument that she was trying to make. And Thornberry didn't really know how to deal with that. And actually, if you think about how utterly polarized Israeli society has become and how easy it has become to dehumanize and completely strip of any agency or humanity Palestinians in the country, then there will be a lot of Israelis who will be looking at that and celebrating it. And, maybe saying, we are a strong nation that is capable of basically pushing around declining power, which is what the UK is, run by a government that doesn't really seem to be knowing what it's doing. And ultimately, they know that we're just going to do whatever the US says anyway. Because again, this government has shown time and time again, as we've already discussed on this show, that its primary foreign policy aim is just to maintain a good relationship with the US, regardless of what we have to give up.
Yeah, and the problem for our government is that as US foreign policy changes, as it's likely to do, they're going to look increasingly stupid because they don't have any policy of their own to fill in the vacuums that arise. I look forward to
even
that,
the stuff on Russia, for example, Keir Starmer saying, I'm going to cut the aid budget to increase defense, right? And that could be seen as a kind of FU to America because they're saying that they're kind of pulling away. But that's exactly what Trump wants. He literally wants NATO countries to increase spending on defense. He's actually said that. That's what he's like using his position, his power in Ukraine to do. It's to say you have to increase your defense spending to the levels that we have all agreed to as part of NATO. And he did it by doing the exact same thing that Trump had did by cutting the aid budget. So it's kind of getting a bit pathetic. It's like Blair-esque, if not worse, to the extent to which it reminds me of, that scene in Love Actually when the US president comes over and then Hugh Grant stands up to him and everyone cheers him on because we all know that we're America's lapdog. He's doing that, but the opposite.